welcome to Tea and Strumpets, a Regency romance review. I'm Zoe.
And I'm Kelsey.
So, Kelsey, this is episode 3. Should we discuss how we've totally made it now?
Oh, we've totally made it. I mean, the crowds are going wild every time I leave the house.
I know. I feel pretty famous. And I just want to say to all of our fans out there that, all right, Goldilocks, this time we're going to get the audio just right.
We've practiced a little bit. We're watching our monitor now, so we're good.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of practice, a little bit of zhuzhing, shall we say, as we go. But we've got things a little bit better, and it's only going to get better from here. So before we jump into the book that we read this week, I have a question for you, Kelsey. What would you say is your favorite, modern 2000s plus rom-com movie?
Well, I think I have 2. So my first go-to is 10 Things I Hate About You.
Classic.
Because young Heath Ledger and young Joseph Gordon-Levitt are just things of beauty.
So true. Such a good choice.
It's definitely one of the ones that I go to, if I'm feeling a little sad, a little blue. I'm like, let's just watch 10 Things I Hate About You. But I also, when I think of romantic comedy, have another one, which is Sweet Home Alabama with Reese Witherspoon.
All right. I can't remember if I've seen that one. And I'm glad that you brought in a second one, because if you hadn't, then our hordes of listeners would have been messaging us to say that actually 10 Things I Hate About You is from 1999. So
I know. Well, it's right on the cusp.
Totally.
I mean, I know it's 99, but it's just such a good movie.
It is.
When I think rom-com, that's my favorite one. But I will say that Sweet Home Alabama is another one I absolutely adore. I will watch that all the time. I love that movie.
I'll have to give it a watch. I can't remember if I've watched it, but I think my favorites come down to 2 as well. So they would be, first off, it would be She's the Man with Amanda Bynes.
That's a good one. I definitely rewatched that recently. I was like, I love this movie. It's so great. Plus, you get to see
Channing Tatum.
Channing Tatum. I always want to say he's Tatum Channing. Or Channing. Yeah, I always mix that up.
No. I like that one. It's funny. It's witty. It's based on a Shakespeare play, which is also a 10 Things I Hate About You thing. It's a She's All That thing. It was that whole genre was taking Shakespeare and turning it into teen rom-coms.
Which are all fabulous, by the way. Any Shakespearean teen rom-com I watch is fantastic.
Yeah, I think most of them are fairly quote-unquote classic for the genre. I think there's 1 or 2 that kind of hit the lists of being really terrible, but there's always outliers, right?
Well, you have to go with the comedies. I mean, if they're trying to do a rom-com based off a different one, it's not going to work so well. It has to be the Shakespearean comedies.
Yeah, not going to be a comedy so much. So my second one would be maybe a little bit lesser known, but it's with Drew Barrymore and Hugh Grant. It's called Music and Lyrics. And
I think I saw that once, but it didn't really strike that chord with me. But then again, I haven't rewatched it recently.
Yeah, it's great. He is a washed up 80s pop star, and she is just his plant housekeeper person. She's actually filling in for his normal person, and he's trying to write lyrics for a pop star or a music and song for the pop star, and he can write songs but not lyrics, and a relationship ensues. Anyhow, it's a very cute movie, including songs. I'm definitely a fan. Maybe a bit of a sleeper, but I highly recommend.
All right, I'll give it another look-see. All right, Zoe. So today we're going to talk about Pennyroyal Green, book number 3. And the title of this book is Since the Surrender by Julianne Long. And our main characters are Chase Eversea and Rosalind March. And Zoe, can you give us a little tidbit about this book, or just about, I like our little facts that you're throwing out every week.
Yeah, of course. So normally I give a little bit about the author, but like I alluded to last week, with so many books in this series, we would learn a lot about Julianne Long. So this week I'm taking it on a little bit of a different route. the author in her bio calls herself a history freak. And I have mentioned my opinions on the fact that there's not a lot of historical accuracy in these books. And you know what? Turns out I might have been wrong. Yeah. So it's interesting because I feel like the author doesn't put too much emphasis on worrying about the historical details, but I think that there are more in there than I realized. I kind of started getting nitpicky about, well, they weren't going to observe the mourning period if Colin died, and then Marcus and Louisa got married a few days ago before that. But her books do have, some historical facts and figures that root it into a certain period of time, and that period of time is actually the Regency period.
There you go. Good thing about this podcast, then.
I know, right? We got the first one right. But yeah, no. So it's funny because, like I said, I've read so many of these books, but I have not actually really taken the time to learn anything about the Regency period. And because I was looking into something for this podcast, I finally looked up who Prinny was. And I know probably most people aren't like me and haven't just dived into many, many books without knowing a little bit more, absorbing a little bit more than me. But Prinny was George the Fourth of England. He was the king. And something that I really think you're going to enjoy is this little tidbit that I learned. So when we were talking about why we loved the Regency period so much compared to other time periods to read about, we both mentioned that one of the things that bothers us is when they get way too absorbed in these wigs of the period, which is before the Regency period, right? Everybody wore wigs.
Yes, that was around the time of the Revolution, which was at the end of the 1700s, versus the Regency, I think of as being firmly in the 1800s, time of the Napoleonic Wars.
Yeah, and so Prinny is the reason that everybody stopped wearing wigs.
Oh, thank God for that.
Yeah. His political opponents put a tax on wig powder, and he abandoned wearing a wig in favor of natural hair. And he set the tone for everybody else to not wear wigs anymore. So we have him.
Oh my gosh. That's the coolest thing I've ever heard. Oh, actually, I'd say that's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard.
I know, but I found that.
Taxing wig powder?
Yeah.
Really?
So I found that such a great tidbit and a cool thing to know that he was the reason that went out of fashion. So,
well, there you go.
I'm sure that there are more nuances than that, but he is credited really with changing that style.
That's cool. I will say I have a hard time when I read these books, like thinking of people with wigs. And then I was reading a different series recently and they were wearing wigs. And so they were taking that into account with all the attire descriptions, and I just would listen to it, understand it, and then immediately in my imagination throw the wig off.
Yeah, I bet we're talking about the same book because we both read a recent new release, and there were so many wigs in this book, and I got really frustrated with it because I love this series, and for whatever reason there were just so many wig descriptions.
They have been harping on the wigs in that series since the beginning.
Okay, well, really,
not this series, but
yeah,
that series.
I really picked up on it this time. And for example, the heroine was playing billiards at 2 a.m. after a costume ball. And she had been described as wearing a 2-foot wig at the beginning of the ball. And it's still 2 a.m. and she's playing billiards wearing this wig. And I just couldn't stop thinking.
I never even consideder that she was still wearing a wig. Like I said, I knew she was wearing a wig and then I threw it off.
I couldn't stop thinking about how uncomfortable that was. I wish I could be like you because I am so much more oh my God, I cannot with this wig anymore. And it definitely detracts from the story from me. And I try to take that wig and, like you say, just throw it off. But they kept coming back and kind of beating me with the wigs in that one, although it was a great book still. I imagine we'll get around to reviewing that because, like we said, we both love that series, but we should probably get back to our book from today.
I think we shall.
So before we get into the deep synopsis of this book, I just want to try to give a 1 to 2 sentence synopsis because let me tell you, if you thought Colin's plot was convoluted and hard to follow, strap in, folks, because we got another one.
Yes, this one does take you on a twisty, twirly roller coaster ride.
Yeah, so to give you some premise of where we're going, we have Chase Eversea and Rosalind March. We, as the reader, find out pretty early that they knew each other before, and he agrees to help her find someone who's missing, and that is the book and the story of them falling in love. So, Kelsey, you ready to take it away?
I'm ready. Let's strap in, y'all. Okay, so Chase is in Eversea and was recently banished from...
Banished!
Banished. He says banished with an exclamation point. He wasn't actually banished. They were just like sent him on a mission, but he saw it as banishment because he wasn't a good time anymore. And so anyway, he was sent to London to find the new vicar, who happens to be a cousin. This is fun. We like the vicar. He'll come into play. Not really in this book, but later on.
Yeah, I think he's got the 7th book, and his name is Adam. But that's really inconsequential.
Yeah. So anyway, and while he's on his way to see the vicar, he receives a message from this dirty little urchin kid who says, "The lady told me to give this to you." So he reads the note, and it's basically just saying, "Meet me at this place in this room."
Yeah, and it's in a woman's hand. And that's, and obviously the urchin said it's from a woman, so that's really all he has to go on. And up until this point, we've had a couple descriptions of our character so far as we're being introduced to him. And one of the lines that I picked out was, "He rationed smiles these days as though the war was still on." But that's just one, and I do like that sentence, but there are lots of them that are really made me feel like, okay, we get it. He's intimidating. He's scowling. He's not that happy of a guy.
He's a broody soldier dude who was injured, so he walks with a limp. Like,
yeah. Oh, but he's a rake. Like, he's definitely a rake.
Oh yeah. They talk about his good lookingness and but he's all grumpy since the war. Anyway, so he gets this note and he thinks, I'm getting a whiff of roses, because these Eversea men and they're smelly, smelly ladies.
Oh yeah. Does he smell roses?
So he's received this note to go to the Montmorency Museum, which he describes as a weird museum that is like an old abandoned dude's house, and then they filled it with things. So there's old furniture from like a king, and there's a lot of puppets, which Chase is not into, by the way. And this is a running theme. He hates the puppets.
He hates the puppets. But I found this so ridiculous. So when he does get to the museum, he enters, and the first exhibit he walks through is like old bedroom furniture. The second thing he walks through is the puppets and marionettes. And the third thing is the Italian cows, which is where he's headed. And it's just like,
well, it's the Italian pastorals, which they only talk about a pastoral as having cows.
Yeah. But it's like bedroom, scary, where you're going. And it's like these two, it's just like, there's going to be something that happens here. There's going to be something that happens here. And
there's an Egyptian room there too, though.
Yeah, but he doesn't go there. It just seemed very forced.
Oh, but I have this fun quote about the puppets.
Yes.
So he says, "The first marionette performance he'd seen gave him a nightmare when he was 6 years old, and he has avoided them as much as he could ever since."
Yeah. Before he got to the museum, we left one thing out, which is that we, as the reader, learn that he has written to the East India Company for an assignment and is waiting for a response. So we know from the beginning that his time here is limited, right? So the clock is on.
Yeah, there's always a clock. So as he enters the room, he sees this painting, and there is a cow in the foreground, and then up above there's like a moon and an angel playing a harp.
A half moon specifically.
Yeah, so it's a half moon with the angel, and the angel is described as busty and benippled.
I did not catch that. Oh my gosh.
I highlighted it.
Oh, great pull, Kelsey.
There you go. And in this room, he sees a woman. She is the only woman to have come into this museum, and he recognized her right away, and she is Rosalind March, Mrs. March, the widow of his former commanding officer in the Napoleonic Wars.
Yep. And he couldn't be less happy to see her.
No. They had a thing, which we don't really know about, but they definitely had a thing back in the day, which is why seeing her is not a good idea. But she didn't know what else to do because her sister has gone missing, and she found out he was in London somehow. And her sister apparently was arrested for stealing a bracelet, which her sister's described as a bubble brain. So she may have been stealing it. She may have just went to look at it in the sunlight. Who knows? And her sister saw her in Newgate. So Lucy gave her some information, which was the Montmorency and the Italian room. So Rosalind has been sitting in this museum trying to figure out what Lucy was talking about because no one seems to know where Lucy has gone.
Yeah, she was awaiting trial, and then she all of a sudden disappeared. The record of her being in Newgate disappeared. Everything is gone. And lots of criminals are transported and such, but usually there's record, and she was supposed to get a trial, and she never got a trial.
Yes, and the reason why Rosalind has gone to Chase is because her sister was friends with a friend of Chase's, which was William Kincaid, who Chase knew from the war. And so she's hoping that Chase might be able to speak to Kincaid because he works in the Home Office and has some dealings with prisoners and things.
And to further complicate, shall we say, Kincaid's character, not only was he hanging out with her sister Lucy, not only is he conveniently in the Home Office, but he also donated this certain painting that they are looking at in that Italian pastoral's room with the half moon, the angel, and the cow. So there's lots of things to connect Kincaid somehow to all of this, but Kincaid refuses to see Rosalind.
Anyway, so he agrees to help her, and on his way out, he sees the little street urchin who gave him the note, who we find out is Liam. And Liam becomes a pretty important character, so we're going to hold on to the fact that Liam's going to come back around.
Yep, he literally trails them throughout the book. So, and he helps with a lot of times to move the plot along. So now things get a little bit crazy as the plot goes. It's a lot of back and forth in seeing different scenes until we even get to the next day.
Yes, they each have little experiences. Chase decides that he needs to go to a brothel because he needs to sexy up another lady to get Rosalind out of his brain.
While Rosalind is still in the museum. She hasn't even left the museum.
She's there a little bit longer, and then on her way out, she has an encounter with the puppet maintenance man. And
Whoa, hold up. Careful how you say encounter around this podcast.
Oh, hey, my bad. She has a conversation with the puppet maintenance man, and he talks about his dislike for the pastorals and mentions his daughter, and then they leave it, and it's gone. So there you go. And then there's a flashback where we find out a little bit more of how Rosalind and Chase met each other. And so basically, she was the colonel's wife.
Yep.
They had chemistry from the get-go, but it was obviously very not okay because she was already married to his commanding officer, and he had a lot of respect for his commanding officer, and they were also friends.
And Rosalind had a lot of respect for her husband. He had taken her because he was enchanted by her, but she had been a little bit below his station. And so he had given her a huge opportunity by marrying her. And he also took on financially her two sisters. So she really loved her husband for that, even if maybe she wasn't in love with him, and therefore wanted to be very respectful to her husband and wanted other people to respect him too.
Yes. So Chase and Rosalind only had one really encounter before they went separate ways, which was they had a kiss in the hallway. They both couldn't help themselves, and they both agreed afterwards it would never happen again. However, Chase was reassigned the next day.
Yeah, and neither of them knew who had betrayed them or seen them or how the colonel had known.
And the colonel really never mentioned anything to Chase. He just reassigned him and left it at that.
Yeah. And the scene, actually, this was a good scene in my opinion, because there's some really sweet writing during this scene. In fact, there's one line where Julianne Long says, "The silence began to pulse." And I thought that was really eloquent. And as a reader, I could really feel what she meant in that moment. And I thought that that was a really cool way of talking about something that doesn't exist.
So I'm going to kind of briefly go. There's a lot of stuff in this book, guys. It gets very convoluted. So I'm going to kind of mention a few things so we can like jump right along to the next plot point. So when Chase goes to this brothel, he sees a painting while he's drunk and kind of stores it in the memory bank about why it's important he remember it. And then Rosalind gets some threatening notes, but she doesn't really know what to do with them because they're vaguely threatening, but they're not explicitly threatening. Chase also, he remembers that the angel that he saw in the brothel is very reminiscent of the angel in the pastoral that was donated by Kincaid. And then we get this little flashback about how Kincaid used to draw ladies with big tits like around the campfire. And he had a really funny sign-off name, which is O Macacus Big. and
that's just important that we spell this. It's OMCCACUS-BIGG. So,
yes.
You know, as a reader, if you're reading a little bit fast, you may read over it. But anyhow,
they make sure to point it out to you that if you say it slowly, though, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And then he gets a letter from the East India Company saying that he has a job and they leave in a fortnight, so he's preparing to leave. And then Chase writes to his sister Genevieve because she's an art fanatic. And he's like, "Hey, do you know anything on this painter, Rubinetto?" And then
I think this is important to remember at this point that it's still the same day. This has all happened within one day.
Yes. Yes, because that night, or it was the next night anyway, in the next 24 hours, there's a ball. Rosalind sneaks into the ball. Chase is already planning to go to the ball because Kincaid's going to be there, which Rosalind knew. So that was why she talked to Chase about going and talking to him. But she doesn't trust Chase, so she, goes to the ball herself and sneaks in. And then she follows Kincaid into the library where he's having this conversation with guys. And she overhears it, and Chase walks in the door and smells roses.
He smells the roses. He knows that she's there.
He doesn't feel her presence. He doesn't see a shadow. He smells her. He's like, "Oh, God. She's here somewhere." Just like a bloodhound, ready to go. So he kind of comes upon her spying, and this is where we have our first encounter. They're literally behind a bookshelf. She was watching the guys and eavesdropping from behind a book. And basically he comes up behind her and she kind of pushes her bottom into his cock. And then he's like, "Oh, that's good." So then he literally lifts her skirt up and, fingers her, or he attempts to finger her. But then what happens is while he's lifting her skirt up, he finds the gun strapped to her thigh. Because as we say, she's being threatened, so she's taking precautions. And that really kills the mood. So then he whisks her out of the room.
Yeah, but this whole thing was like, first of all, there's like so much going on in this scene. They're, behind the bookcase, there's other people talking, and the conversation that they overhear is actually vaguely important, but both of them are too hot and bothered to really take notice of the fact that there's this odd conversation about girls and a pirate stage.
And
charge a subscription. Yeah, sell shares, capital, debt, mermaid. It's like there's this weird conversation and it's important to them, although they're just too bothered with each other to notice. And then Chase gets so irrationally angry to find this pistol strapped to her leg. Like, irrationally angry.
But wait, Zoe, because he did ascertain that the gun was locked.
Oh, yeah, he did ascertain that. Good, thank goodness. But, he's just kind of a dick in this moment. It's like a very controlling, kind of dickish energy that he gives off in this. And he just, I don't know, I think we can tell that I'm not a fan.
Yeah, he does kind of really overreact a bit when this happens. There's really not a lot of...
Like, yeah, she has a pistol strapped to his leg. And yeah, he's angry because, what was she going to do? Shoot his friend? But he, is, blooming mad about it. So mad that he pretty much says hello, orders her to leave, says hello, to his friends, and then runs out after her. Hello, goodbye to his friends, and then runs out after her, and then immediately says, "We're going to your house. You're taking me home." And then, like, are you kidding me? I don't know.
No, it was very weird. And then when he gets there, they talk and this and that, and then he comes up with, after this encounter, and she shows him the threatening letters, and he's like, "We should marry," and she's like, "What?"
Yeah, the actual words are, "We ought to marry," and I will say it was like, it's kind of a cute moment where the hero, like, he can't come to grips with his feelings. He doesn't know how to express the things that he's feeling, so he decides to be honorable instead. And,
And it is done with an idea that he's protecting her. She has these notes, so he's like, "Okay, but if we marry, then I can protect you, And she's like, "No, that's okay."
Yeah, she's now a widow, and she's in the position to, like, figure out what she wants with her life. She doesn't want to give up that freedom, and says, that's not enough reason for me to do so. So at this point...
Oh, and then plus he says, "I'm going to India in 2 weeks." And she's like, "Yeah, that's great. I don't want to go to India, so guess we're not going to do this."
Yeah, which I appreciate. Now, it's kind of another thing that Julianne Long tends to do in her books, right? She actually, like, gives the truths before they become a big problem for the characters, right? So we've had Rosalind come clean about her threatening letters, which she didn't divulge in the very first part, but she has now divulged. And we also have Chase saying, "Okay, well, I have this ticking time bomb of our relationship." So everybody knows the cards are all on the table.
Yes, and I will say it's always nice when there's an honest conversation happening.
Yeah, and that is kind of the catalyst, this conversation of them both being honest, for him agreeing to truly help her, because all of a sudden he has kind of a little bit more of all of the facts, and he does agree that something fishy is going on.
Yep. So then we're going to have a rapid fire informational session again, guys. So the next day... Yeah, it's crazy. Chase gets the note from his sister that tells him there's no such painter as Rubinetto in her understanding, and she studies classical paintings. However, Rubinetto does mean cock in Italian, so she feels like someone's having a jest. And Chase goes to the museum, and there's a puppet show outside the museum, and they sing the song of Colin Eversea, which everyone hates the ballad of Colin Eversea, who is an Eversea. And then they give this weird description of the painting in the Italian wing that he's looked at, and he doesn't quite understand it, and then moves on. And he has a conversation with Kincaid, and while Kincaid isn't necessarily... He's denying things, but at the same time, too, he's denying it in a way that makes Colin suspicious. And he meets up with Rosalind. They go back to the museum. They look at the painting again. They don't know what to do. And then he says, "Hey, I want to show you this angel," because he's remembered that the angel in the brothel looks the same as the angel in the painting at the museum. So he actually takes Rosalind to the brothel. But before that, they see our lovely street urchin friend Liam. And he kind of talks about, "Oh, there's people coming out all the time, and I make money by holding the horses, which is a bullshit job that people just give him coins for." And he's like, "There's been a lot of, like, rich dudes coming by, and so I've actually been making a lot of money here, and I'm here all day because these people are coming out all the time, day and night." So that's interesting, but it's just kind of an aside at this point. And then the clerk at the front desk of the museum, who was helpful yesterday, is no longer helpful. And they ask Liam to kind of count how many men come in and out. And then they go to the brothel and look at the painting. And she's like, "Yes, I recognize the angel." And guys, that was just a very long day. Hui.
Yeah, and you left out a few points because they weren't necessary. But yeah
there's even more, guys.
That's the thing that, like, gets me is, like, they get to the museum and Liam is like, "Hey, people come in and out at weird hours." And then they, like, go into the museum and then they come out and they're like, "Oh, hey, Liam said people come in at weird hours. Now we think we should ask Liam to, like, notice who comes in and out and count them and this and that." And it's just like, why did it have to be like that? Because it's like A, B, C, D, A, F, G, C. I mean, it's just this weird pattern of stuff happening. So back to the brothel, though, right?
Oh, yeah, the brothel is fun. Because in the brothel, we meet a character. A Mr. LeVay has come in off...
LeVay, you say?
LeVay!
We've heard this name before in the last book. It was, I believe, who Violet was told there is a levee in her future.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was just what the gypsy daughter said. She just like screamed out, levee.
Yeah, so now we have this connection to a levee. So who could this be?
So levee's hanging out at the brothel, and he's just there to hang out. So we kind of move past him and up into the bedroom that holds the painting.
Yeah, and this is just a reminder that this is Rosalind and Chase. Chase has taken a respectable woman to a brothel to look at a dirty painting of an angel pleasuring a man. And what happens, though, is that Rosalind becomes like a little bit shy and then earnest. And she actually says, does it really feel as good as the painting makes it seem? And I just feel like it's a really honest moment, which shows like kind of, even though she was a widow, like she has a little bit of naivety. And I really liked that moment for her character. And then Chase says, he shares some carnal knowledge, and it's kind of a sweet scene, and then offers to show her all of it as she deserves to know. And poor Rosalind is all hot and bothered and disappointed because she's finally comes to terms with the fact that Chase just really wants to get in her pants. And so she makes a strong exit.
Yes. And I will say too, like talking about that and all the carnal pleasures that he can show her. And at this time, and a running theme in a lot of these books is that the women were very sheltered from things like sex. You know, they were told it was a duty. They weren't told it was fun. It was all about the man's orgasm. It wasn't about the female orgasm.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, she was sheltered, and she shares some information about her as a character later, and that she, you know, she did have orgasms with her husband, but they kind of kept everything pretty vanilla, it sounds like. But I was really angry at Chase in this scene, and I'm kind of surprised that the author wrote him this way, because yes, a lot of these books are these men sharing knowledge with the women, and yet he was kind of a dick in this scene. He was like, I know so much and you deserve to know. And it was just slimy. Like, it didn't work for me. I felt it was slimy. And then I was happy with the author, though, for having the woman make a strong exit. Like, you know what? This is a bummer. It was cool to learn this, but now I feel like all you want is to get in my pants. So I thought that was an interesting choice for the author.
Yeah. And also to time and place. Chase is not very good at time and place.
Oh, no, he's not. All right, so next, I believe they go to the artist's house of the two angel paintings.
Yes.
Which is kind of an odd thing to be like, let's go look at a painting to confirm it's the same angel in the other painting, and then let's figure out where this painting was painted by.
Exactly. And so now they're going to go talk to the painter, because they obviously know that he's alive and well from going to this brothel. So they meet him, and he is really nice, and he's like, I'm an artist. Money speaks a lot to me. And we find out that the painting in the museum was commissioned recently, and the commissioner was a Mr. Wellendowed.
Yeah, again, that's WELLAND-DOWD, Mr. Wellendowed.
Mr. Well-endowed.
All right. So now they know that there is a kind of link here. We've got the weird names happening. So they decide to have a night at the museum.
Yes. So they're going to sneak into the museum.
They've made this decision. But first, 70 other things have to happen before we get back to the night at the museum.
Oh, God. So many other things. First, Rosalind actually scolds Chase because he let slip that he was meant to be in London to talk to his cousin to be the vicar. And she's like, that poor man is waiting on you to give him a job. You need to go tell him he has a job.
Yeah, so he spends some time with him.
Then he kind of stops by the museum and talks to Liam about who's been coming and going. And Liam reports that different numbers of people are going in and coming out.
And different people go in, then come out. Sometimes the same people come out, and sometimes different people come out. And the numbers don't match up. So not only does Liam tell them who came in and out, but he also has previously mentioned, hey, his sister didn't come home last night. And now he's found out a little bit more information about his sister. She was arrested for stealing. Oh my goodness. Now we have 2 girls that have been arrested from stealing. And not only has she been arrested for stealing, but she is missing from Newgate because he went to look for her there and she wasn't there.
And then poor Chase and Rosalind are actually really upset for Liam because they really like Liam and he's kind of become their little sidekick. And they're like, well, no, they've hurt Liam now, so we really need to get going on this investigation.
Yeah.
It's not enough Lucy's missing. Now Liam's sister is missing, so now it's a big problem.
And Chase finds a connection. He finds that there was the same Charlie that arrested both girls. So obviously he was bribed to do something different with them. And with a, kind of a threat and I think a bigger bribe, he learns that this man, this Charlie, has been paid to report if he has really pretty criminals before they've been booked. So the idea is that they don't get actually booked and that they're going to go somewhere else where they won't be harmed, whereas the law would have them transported or hung. So far, this Charlie offers up that there have been 3 pretty girls. He's only done 3. So they're getting in on the ground floor of this trafficking.
And interestingly enough, he lets loose that he was paid by Macaucus Big.
Ah!
So, oh no, Kincaid is definitely involved in somehow, some way.
Yeah, so, and the 3 girls are Lucy, Maggie, who is Liam's sister, and Cora Middlebury.
Who we don't know yet.
We don't know yet, yeah. So finally, that long day has passed and our planned night at the museum is here. And so they sneak into the museum and I wrote in all caps, silent sneaking wrought with sexual tension.
Yes, because if they're in a dark room together, guys, it's getting on.
Yeah, so of course we have to pass the bedroom room, right? The bedroom furniture room. And so they have encounter number 2 here.
Yes.
Not in the bed, as you would think, but up against a dresser because it's not like there's anything going on right now. There's not like something to be doing.
Yeah, they kind of like looked around the museum and they're like, well, we don't see anything fishy, but there's sexual tension. Let's fuck against the dresser.
Yeah, so they do that. And then Chase has another great line. Again, I really feel like not only do I not like Chase, but our author doesn't like Chase because his next line is, quote, well, that's done then.
Yeah, Chase is really good at the romantic words. He's just like, well, good thing we got rid of that sexual tension by having sex.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to move on and we're going to leave the museum because that's what happens next. But I'm going to read my next bullet point because, again, I wrote, Rosalind smells her husband's cigar. This isn't really important. Nothing is found.
Because she also doesn't mention it to Chase. She just is like, that smells like my husband's gross tobacco that he used to smoke.
There's just so many, like, details that are here maybe to, like, make us figure something out. And they just, like, they're so unnecessary. Anyhow.
They really are. And so then they go back to Rosalind's house, and Rosalind lets loose about her conversation with the marionette cleaner, which she doesn't think that much about, but she's like, I don't know, this dude was cleaning and he said something to me.
Well, and it's very important that the author remind us readers about this plot point in case we had forgotten that there was something important about puppets in this book.
Yes, and then Chase leaves like the ass that he is.
Yeah.
But they kind of just discuss like, okay, well, we've had sex once, you're leaving soon anyway, like maybe we could just keep doing that until I go.
Yeah, and he leaves her with another great line, dream of it, Rosalind. And I'm just like, ugh, I felt just like gross, slimy ickiness. I was not feeling it.
Yeah. So then Chase goes back to the museum early in the morning and like snatches up the puppet guy because this puppet dude is out in front of the museum on pretty much every nice day. And Chase is like, I know you've been dropping me hints. Let's talk about it. And it turns out it's the puppet cleaner Rosalind spoke to at the beginning of the book. And then he's like, my daughter Cora is missing. And Chase is like, Cora, that's the 3rd girl.
Everything's coming together so nicely. There were clues in the beginning, and they were clues. They weren't just superfluous things. Oh, wait, they were superfluous. Anyhow.
And so, yeah, Chase also has to finish it because he needs to go back to Pennyroyal Green to say goodbye to his family before he leaves for his trip. So he's like, cool, we got one more day to solve this mystery, guys, because I gotta go tomorrow.
Yeah, not only does he need to solve the mystery, but he tells Rosalind, he kind of gives her an ultimatum, right? He's like, he's leaving tomorrow, so like you should have sex with me again is kind of the feeling that I get from this. And it's really funny because like I feel like 10 pages ago we were talking about the fortnight that we had.
And then it's gone.
Yes, a couple of days have passed. And I know he's going back to Pennyroyal Green, and so that's what some of the days are, but like it just doesn't quite line up. There's a decent amount of time, and then now I'm leaving tomorrow. So maybe you should have sex with me one more time.
Yeah, which they do because they decide to sneak back into the museum, and they already know this whole bedroom is set up for them. And so they have encounter number 3 on the big, dusty bed in the museum while they're supposed to be figuring out how it's connected to the missing girls.
Yeah, and you know what? We didn't talk about in the beginning if we remembered anything about these books, and this is what I remembered. See, I remembered nothing, so this is okay. Yeah, but I only remembered this scene. It was like imprinted in my brain because when I first read it, I was like, there's this moment of like he pulls back the curtains and you can like see the dust in the air, and it's like this eloquent, beautiful description of like shimmering, and all I could think of was just like dust everywhere. And then
she's gonna climb naked
in the dusty old bed, and there's things to do, and there could be people about. They've been hearing giggling, they've been hearing weird sounds. I just was like, guys, they're
supposed to be like finding people, and then they're like, oh, and this is the thing that I don't remember because the bed is all dressed, but apparently it's been enclosed in curtains, as all those beds were at the time. But the curtains, like he draws the curtains shut, so then they're even in a darker bed, and I'm like, those curtains are not clean. Everything's gross. Like, don't have sex on that, please.
Yeah, and so this was the first time, this is my third romance novel that I've ever read, and this is the first time I read about a man going down on a woman, because that happens in this scene. And
Fair.
I did not feel like that was a great introduction to reading about that on the written page, because I was literally already just like skeezed out by this dusty, musty, antique bed. Oh, can you imagine the creaking? Oh my god.
Oh god, no. Like it's gonna be so loud, and I mean, yes, like really good because it's not in all the books that we, a lot of times the man going down on the woman, it's often, I will say it's more often with a widow who's like, oh, I'm experienced. And then the guy's like, but have you experienced this? And she's like, I have not. Oh my gosh.
Well, and I think there's actually a lot to be said for things that, you can learn, not necessarily learn, but like feel more comfortable with as a woman reading these books and feeling like, yes, these things should be normal and natural and not taboo and not talked about. So, but we can get into that another time. But they not only does he go down on her, but he like throws himself into a 69 position and sticks his cock in her mouth. And I was like,
there you
go. So it was just, again, aggressive, and like, he obviously wasn't forcing her, but it was just like, the scene was just too much for me because of the dust.
It's mainly because they're in a dusty, gross museum bed.
Yeah, I couldn't. It was not like a wig that I could put to the side,
No,
it was just...
I will say too, I didn't quite understand this scene, and I'm just like, cool, you're having sex, you're 69ing, you're both in this gross, disgusting bed that probably smells musty,
And there's 3 women whose lives depend on you, guys.
Yeah.
They
need to figure out this dilemma because they need to find her sister and Cora and Maggie, and yet they're like, brief sex break, y'all.
Yeah, there's like something about being on the clock, and then there's something about just like completely like disregarding the clock. Anyhow, I think we should get out of this dusty bed and move on.
We definitely should. So they wrap things up, they get dressed, and they hear this weird faint giggling sound. And so they start searching again, and then Chase remembers that Rosalind was wearing a feather in her hat when he met her, and he saw it moving in the breeze, and he was like, maybe it wasn't her moving her head that caused the breeze. Maybe there was a breeze. And so they go over to the painting and they find out there's a hole in the cow's ass.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. That's funny and everything, but it's so far-fetched. Like, oh, yes, by Jove, I remember her feather flittering.
And then our marionette cleaner guy shows up and he's like, oh, there's something funky about that wall.
Yeah.
It's connected to this brothel. Like I looked at the plans. He suddenly got a hold of the plans for the thing and found a hidden tunnel that leads to the Mezzaluna. And then Chase is like, doesn't Kincaid own the Mezzaluna?
Yes, the twice aforementioned derelict theater that Kincaid owns in Covent Garden.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not only, this one I kind of shook my head about because it's called the Mezzaluna, which means half moon, and the painting has a half moon on it. And I was like, oh, I probably could have gotten that one, but there were just so many things going on that I literally couldn't figure out where to focus.
Yeah, so they they accidentally find out how to open the hidden wall that's behind the painting. And then there's a lot of silliness that happens in the tunnel. Someone gets knocked out. There is costumes everywhere.
The slapstick hijinks begin to ensue. It feels very slapsticky. And I know that I'm adding a sh in there because it needs it. It's so ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba.
It really is. And then they make their way to the tunnel and they find the secret entrance. And the guy behind the thing is Mr. Woodcock. And so Chase introduces himself as Hugh G. Rection.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Again, H-U-G-H space G period space W-R-E-X-I-O-N Hugh G. Rexion, or,
Yeah. And they find well endowed is the clerk from the Montmorency.
The clerk that was first helpful and then not helpful.
So he's been blackmailed into helping with this whole adventure.
He has, his family has been threatened, but he's also kind of been enjoying himself. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, no, it's fine. I'll help you guys. I'd much rather be out of this.
He's so this is getting a little too dodgy for me. So I'm just going to slip out. And so they find out, oh, Macacus Big is running the whole thing. And oh, wait, it's Kincaid.
Yeah, of course. And basically this is a new type of brothel where there are fantasy rooms.
Yes.
And so the girls are just paying their debts on their back, but they can pay their debts faster on their backs, but they can also just act out fantasies. Like there's a pirate scene where a girl is lashed to the mast and she's just kind of going like, and there's a mermaid and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and so some of them are seasoned girls and other of them are girls such as Lucy and Maggie and Cora who were imprisoned, and then they're basically spirited away the secret place and given 1 week to decide that either they're going to participate in the fantasy world, whether or not they have sex with the patrons or not is up to them, but they will be released faster if they do. And they will eventually earn their freedom instead of earning it in the prison. And if they decide not to participate, then they're going to get thrown back in prison.
Yeah, so Lucy and Maggie are still in that week of decision, but Cora has agreed to be a mermaid, although she can't stop giggling. So that's where all the giggling's been coming from.
And so Kincaid shows up and he talks to them. He's like, look, I was bored and this is kind of fun. And I'm not a rapist or anything. They all decide to do it on their own.
Yeah, he actually says the words, not a rapist. They all capitulate, which is, again, it's just a weird decision from this author because I don't feel like her other characters are like these two.
No, but it's kind of downplays, and Chase is obviously very affronted, but also too, it's no, you're just extorting people for sex because that's really good too.
To be honest, his actions haven't been much better. Chase's actions haven't been that much better.
No, but and then Kincaid is I was thinking about inviting you, but you're so righteous, and all of us are kind of is Chase very righteous? Because he seems to kind of go back and forth on the righteousness levels.
But if all of this wasn't enough, that we've solved the mystery, now Kincaid decides to offer up that he was the one who saw them kissing and he was the one who told the colonel because he wanted to live through the war and needed Chase not to be distracted, which is such a strong argument. I don't,
Yeah,
it's so weak.
And then Rosalind comes in to say, oh, well, the Colonel forgave us. He told me so. But he never told me who told our secret, but he never forgave that person. He thought that person was the lowest of the low.
That really doesn't affect Kincaid because Kincaid's an ass and he just kind of laughs it off. So
yeah, he doesn't really care. So then they tell Kincaid that he better find his way on a ship or Chase is going to expose what he's done. And then Cora gets reunited with her dad to do puppety things.
It actually says that. I think this is important. In the paragraph where they're leaving, it says, they go off, no doubt, to do puppety things. And I just, I had a real hard time with that one. I was just come on. All right, let's move on.
And Maggie and Liam go stay at Rosalind's house with Lucy, and she, mother hens everybody. And Chase is like, cool, I'm going to Pennyroyal Green, bye. And then he takes the Rubinetto painting from the Montmorency, the one with the hole in the cow's ass, and he gives it to his brother Colin, because as he said throughout the entire book, Colin only ever talks about cows.
Yep. So Colin has the painting. That part I really liked. That was a happy ending for me.
Yes. Then Chase comes back from Pennyroyal Green and they have encounter number 4, which is good old goodbye sex.
Yeah, in a chair. Because, we did have sex in a bed once in this, but it was a dusty old antique bed. So I don't know if any of that counts as typical. Although romance novels aren't known for the typical. But yeah, in a chair.
And to be fair, whenever they have enjoyable sex in weird positions, in such a chair, I'm that doesn't sound very comfortable.
No, it just is the mechanics.
Anywho. And so then he says goodbye, and Rosalind realizes she loves him and she's a fool to let him go. So she runs to try to catch him before he makes his ship, and he is still on her front door. So she literally runs right into him.
Yeah. And Chase has a good moment where he says he was wrong. He shouldn't leave, and he was actually made to love and protect, specifically you, he says to Rosalind. And I have this just moment where this whole paragraph that Chase is speaking to her, where was this Chase the rest of the book? He was such a much better character in those last few lines where you're oh, if you had been this guy, but maybe reserved or something, but not an actual asshole, I would have really liked you. Yeah. And then Rosalind has also another shining moment because she says she loves him too, and they, quote, ought to marry. So she kind of gets the last word there.
Which is great because she gets to propose to him, which is always fun.
Yep.
Yes, and so Lucy and Maggie end up going to Pennyroyal Green, and that's a happy ending. So they're going to hang out with Chase and Rosalind in Pennyroyal Green, and Lucy gets to go to Miss Endicott's school for recalcitrant girls, which we'll talk about more in another book.
Yep, and that gives everybody a nice happy ending. Again, no epilogue for us, so we are bereft.
I will say she's really not good with the epilogues, and it drives me up a wall.
I know that they talk more about them in the other books, but it's pretty sad. So, Kelsey,
yes.
Now that we've finished...
Oh my gosh, the long winding tale.
The long winding tale of Chase and Rosalind. Shall we adjourn to the parlor?
We shall. All right, guys. So this is how we're going to tell you how to get in touch with us. And we welcome all feedback as well as comments and what you like about us. We really like those. So right now you can get in touch with us by email at romancepod@gmail.com. And we also have an Instagram.
That's the letter T, N, and then the word Strumpets. So T as in Tom, N as in Nancy, Strumpets is our Instagram.
Excellent. And we also have a website, so you can find us at romancepod.com.
And we're also going to have a YouTube by the time that this drops. We're also going to be putting our episodes on YouTube. So if you want to share those out on social media, if that's the way that you'd like to do it, please do so. And if you really want to know what's going on in the world of tea and strumpets, you're welcome to sign up for our email notifications. You'll find those on our website. But I have one big ask for everyone, and I think Kelsey would echo this ask. We are a new podcast, and the way that new podcasts get found is 3 ways. Way number 1, rate. Way number 2, review. Way number 3, subscribe. I bet you guys have never heard that before. But yeah, please, those things would really help us. That's how other people will find us. So if you like what you're hearing, if you can take a minute out of your day to give us a quick star rating, a quick review, and click that subscribe button, that'll really help us out.
Please help us out so we can keep coming back.
Yeah. And then one last thing, we really would love to hear from all of you guys about book recommendations. So while Kelsey and I are going to be focusing specifically on Regency books more of the time, and specifically traditional ones, because that's what is our favorite, we know that there are a ton of other awesome books for all sorts of different preferences. So we'd love to hear from those of you who know those books, who enjoy those books, who love those books. We'd love to hear your recommendations. So if you have a book that you'd like to let other people know about that's maybe not something that we would cover here, or it can be something we'd cover here too, just send us a quick 1 to 2 sentence stinger on the book and why you love it, and we would love to share that with our listeners here in the parlor.
All right. Let's break this book down. Let's just real talk about it.
Let's have some real talk about this book for sure. So as I was reading this book, I was trying to think about the book to me felt like it was trying too hard. It was trying too hard in so many ways. And I was like, why? What makes it, to me as a reader, subpar? I don't think it's any surprise to know that I had an unfavorable opinion of this book. But to me, I felt like the main thing that made it subpar is that it tells us things as a reader rather than lets us come to the realization ourselves. The writing doesn't trust us to come to the right conclusions. And that was done through a lot of battering of characterizations, right? So it was Chase was scowly, Chase had a limp, Chase was mean, Chase was nasty after the war, Chase is grumpy, Liam is going to call him that gimpy cove. There was just all of these things that were just, Cora and her father left to do puppety things. I was like, really?
Yeah, I will say that I actually enjoyed the book a little bit because of its convoluted plot. And I liked the fact that the author, she got better at wrapping things up a little bit. So there wasn't in Colin's book, it was so convoluted, but it was convoluted without wrapping it up anywhere. It was just facts thrown out versus this convoluted had a conclusion. Everything kind of drew towards the same point, and it was a lot more, in a way, more linear because it all drew to the same conclusion.
I'll totally agree with you on that, because you're right. Every little hint she dropped in the beginning, for example, the half moon in the painting, right? And then we heard, as a reader, we read about Kincaid's derelict, empty theater called the Mezze Luna. Those things tied up, right? You're right. There was a line between the two of them, and at the end, we got that conclusion. I still just felt like she was trying too hard. She was so excited to write this Mary Chase and this, sorry, no pun intended, and this mystery, this sexy mystery, but it was still too much. And I do think it was a step forward from Colin's book, but I don't think the rest of Pennyroyal Green has much of a mystery until, does Lyons and Olivia's book have a bit of a mystery in it?
Not really.
Okay, because their story, you've got the mystery points kind of from book 1 to book 10, and then book 11 wraps it up. But
yeah,
regardless, I just feel like, we don't get this later with her. So I think she kind of moves away from this and realizes that when she has a little bit of a simpler thing, she does a better job with it.
Yes, and I think this is almost like an Eversea theme. I think she wanted the Everseas to have more convoluted plots. Because Colin's book was convoluted, Chase's book was convoluted. Miles wasn't. It was more sweet. There was less of a mystery going on, and just a natural progression. And I think that maybe she was trying to really differentiate the families. Granted, we're only 3 books in, but it's a little less mystery-esque in Miles's book than in Chase's book. But Colin's book was very similar in that way.
Yeah. So this book also has a lot of plot points, and it falls under a lot of tropes.
Oh my god, it does. Let's list them out here. We've got the alpha hero. We've got the fling. We've got forbidden love. Military, which could they tell you enough that Chase was a military and had been in the Napoleonic Wars and had been injured? I swear to God, they mentioned it at least twice a chapter.
Yeah, for sure. And because he's in the military, he's a protector.
Yes. And I feel like there was a little bit of a theme of redemption because Chase never felt good about his whole encounter with Rosalind, and he felt like he betrayed Colonel March that way. And so there was a bit of that redemption at the end where he found out the Colonel knew and had forgiven him.
Absolutely. I agree.
So then we have the reunion between Rosalind and Chase. She's a widow. He has scars, actual physical scars, guys. Mm-hmm. And it's not one of our lists of tropes, but I will say solve a mystery together is definitely something that is very common in these books. There's like that common goal, that common mystery that they need to figure out together.
I think that if it's not a trope on any other list, we should petition to get it on, because it is definitely a typical thing that you'll find frequently in historical romances.
Yes. And so I think I know your opinion on this one, but let me know, how do you think Chase rates as a hero?
Yeah. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, that's what we've been doing. I have a number in my head. I am curious, actually, what number would you think I would give him?
Oh, I think you're going to give him like a 4, maybe a 3.
Ding, 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 ding.
Oh, I know you so well.
I give Chase a 3 for sure. I do not like him. I mean, he's not the worst. I've read other books where like
he could have been much worse.
He could have been much worse. I don't give him a 3 because he was like a little bit, too alpha for me, or like too kind of sleazy. It's like the combination of things. To me, he just was an idea that wasn't developed, and it was like trope, 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 Gimpy Cove.
He was too broody hero, but once we got the backstory, there wasn't more development beyond that.
Yeah, you kept kind of waiting for that to redeem him, and I just was like, nope, that's just kind of who he is. He's a little one-dimensional, and I just yeah.
And to be fair, I will say, I'm going to give my ratings at the same time on this one because I kind of have a similar opinion of the heroine. I feel like with Chase, and maybe that was why, because I had zero memory of the book, because both the hero and the heroine to me were just kind of blah. Mm-hmm. Like, I liked Rosalind because she I thought she was a good stand-up woman, but at the same time too, I really didn't see her development. I really didn't get to know her as well. Yeah. And I really didn't feel an emotional connection to Chase either. So for me, I would rate them both at like a 4.5 or 5. Like for me, tipping, I know that's pretty low for me, but I feel like tipping into like below 5, I have really strong dislike of them. But for me, 5 is just kind of like, I just had zero opinion.
Yeah. So for Rosalind, my opinion changes, and I would give her a 6 actually, because I think she's double the character that Chase is, in my opinion. I think that actually she has some really feminist moments of like that time she leaves the brothel and is like, this is what this man wants of me. And also that she gets that kind of final word at the end of the book where we ought to marry. She not only kind of gets to rub that in his face, but in a sweet way, without being kind of sour about it. And I also think like she is a widow. She is taking care of her sisters. She's looking out for her sisters. She's doing everything she can. When she doesn't know if Chase is for sure going to help her, she straps a pistol to her leg when she's getting threatening letters, and she goes out to try to see if she can find any information about her sister.
She's a strong woman. Like I would say, like when we talk about our feminist recap, I'm going to say she's a supporter.
Oh, for sure.
Like I would say, supporting feminine wise, I would say the book does a good supporter in the feminist zone.
Yeah, it's interesting because Chase is such kind of a dick, and so is Kincaid, but they're outrightly dicks. But then Rosalind has these moments. Like if Rosalind had, let's say, succumbed to the tension while they were in the brothel and they'd had sex in that room, I think like I would have felt completely differently, right? I would have felt like she gave in when he was like, there's so much more, Rosalind, I can show you. And then instead she had this feminist empowering moment and was like, that's what he wants of me. Okay. I'm out.
Yeah, but I also feel too, even in the first scene in the library, she was very much like, well, I don't know when I'm going to get this again, so like give it to me, you know?
And actually there is a moment and another time, it's during the scene of that the two of them kiss for the first time, where Chase sort of makes it known that he wants to kiss her, but she's the one who closes the gap. And I think the quote is something like, you know, and in this, she made herself complicit in her husband's, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, in the betrayal of her husband. So I think like, you know, she is saying, I make decisions for myself. And these are, you know, these are things that I am deciding. So I appreciate that about her.
Agreed. Yeah.
But I completely agree with you when you say that she just, you don't remember her. Like, I couldn't remember her name for the life of me. I couldn't remember a thing about her character. I just remembered the dusty sex scene in the museum.
I mean, I think that's probably the most memorable. But of memorable, I do have a couple great quotes to share with you.
All right. Shoot.
And one is more a serious one, and the other one's just kind of funny. And they both take place pretty much in the same scene around the dusty bedroom scene.
Nice.
And so the first one is our more serious one, which was, she wished he understood that true strength sometimes had to do with the ability to simply surrender to life, to circumstances, to uncertainty, to his own humanity and fallibility.
Ooh.
And I think that this is just like, this is what you want to get from Chase, you know, that feeling of him kind of coming to terms with it. And she's kind of like, he's so rigid and he's so like shuts people out just because he doesn't expect more from them. And he doesn't want to understand what it is to like be vulnerable with other people. And so he just shuts them out instead. And it's like, this is kind of what we wanted of Chase to make him a better hero.
Yeah, I think that the best moments we get of Chase are from Rosalind's perspective. Like, she has these kind of thoughts and moments about him that, you know, you as a reader start to like feel some attachment to her because she sees this other part of him, but you just don't connect with it enough because we never see that part.
We don't see it.
We don't see it, right?
Yeah, exactly. After this sexy scene, when we hear the giggles, Rosalind is quoted as saying, "Ghost," she whispered into his ear. He turned his head toward her and scowled so insultingly she practically heard it.
Yeah.
Which I just love because, like, I just found it so hilarious because all we've talked about is his broody face and his scowly face, and he just scowled so hard at her when she was like, "Ghosts," because that's her conclusion for a museum with a lot of old things, and she hears random giggles, and she's like, "There's faux show ghosts in here."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Bitch, please."
Yeah. And I think it's funny. But I also think that, like, because I think she was trying to be funny and a little bit, but also like, is it ghosts? Like, what else can they make? What other conclusion can they make? But then at the same time, like, the way that the writer writes about Chase, right? Scowled so insultingly, she practically heard it. Instead of like scowled so, you know, strongly, she practically heard it. Because those little choices that she makes for Chase, I think, are the things that make me just like, ugh, with him. I think that those kind of, just writing style choices. But I still love her as a writer, in fact, because I think a lot of the time she does have such a great job of infusing humor into the book. And there's another time that they're sneaking through the museum, and there's just this passage that is my favorite from the book because it's actually more just showcasing her writing. And so they're, as I said, they're sneaking through the museum, and it says, past the stone slabs of ancient words, someone's shopping list, a poem. Regardless, it was forever profound now that it had been etched in stone. So I just...
That's so great.
Yeah, I just thought it was really
It's true, though. I think there was actually an ancient study where they found this writing and they're like, I wonder what this could be. And it was literally just an inventory list. And they're like, well, this is great because now we know all these ancient words were for this because they figured out it was an inventory.
And forever profound as it is etched in stone.
Exactly.
So we've got now our encounter counter to discuss, and we clearly talked about all of our encounters as we passed them in the book, but we have a total of 4 encounters in this book.
Which is like moving up in the world, too. I will say as the series goes on, we get more and more encounters.
Yeah, and you know what I just realized is that we should actually add our encounter counter to our spreadsheet. We do have, we like spreadsheets here. So we have been keeping track of all of our ratings and all of kind of those important notes from the book. And we're going to make that available to you guys on our website in some way at some point. But I think we'll add a column for encounter counter because, yeah, it is interesting to see.
I think that's a good plan.
How many times they have an encounter every book.
Yeah, and good to rate them against other books.
So although you and I both weren't big fans of the characters, what would you say about like the steaminess or the tension in this book?
I would say like for me, the tension was good and the steaminess was good, but for me, I couldn't get past the locations of majority of their encounters.
Yep.
Like, I just was like, what are you doing? Because it's not like they snuck away to a closet and like, I understand, like, the danger is part of what, like, the danger of being caught is what makes it sexier. But at the same time, too, I was like, guys, you're on a mission. This is not the time.
It wasn't just the location. It was the time. It was, there's a time and a place. And there's one thing if it's like, oh, we're supposed to be going into dinner right now. We might get caught because we've been gone too long. Or it's like 3 women's lives depend on us. Let's have a quick screw against the dresser. I also couldn't do it. To me, I felt like, we talked about kind of our steaminess ratings and you mentioned like, a sweet book would be like a cup of tea, right? I would say this is like that cup of tea that you left out on the counter and forgot about and then came back and were like kind of sad and wished that you still had that cup of tea to drink, but now it's cold and like you take a sip and you're like, oh God, but I'm thirsty, so I'm just going to keep drinking this tea.
Yeah, you're like, oh, this is what I really wanted, but it's just been a hair too long, so now it's not great anymore, but it still has that essence of what could be great.
Yeah, it has a nice flavor, but like, anyhow. So yeah, I didn't find this book particularly steamy or sexy at all, just because, I got wrapped up in the time and the place.
Yeah, so I would say, at least in my opinion, that this is not the first book I would recommend to someone. I would be like, if you really care about reading the series from start to finish, then read it. But if you don't mind skipping a book, you could probably skip this book and no one would care.
Yeah, I would say the same, but maybe even stronger, which is like, I would recommend to people, this book is not worth their time. Again, if you're a completist and you want to read the series and you're a fast reader, Kelsey and myself, I believe, I would call us very fast readers. But,
yes.
Not everybody is a really fast reader. So if it takes you a few days or a week to complete a romance novel like this, by all means, please skip this one. It's totally not worth it. You've already spent an hour or an hour and a half of your time listening to us fetch about it. Like, go straight on to number 4. So, final note for this book. What would you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10?
Probably like, I would honestly, it's like almost like a 3. Like maybe a 4.
Yeah.
Like, I want to like it.
Yeah.
And I do like a good convoluted plot because I like a good adventure story, but like, there really wasn't a lot to recommend about it as far as everything else. I think honestly, like my favorite character in the book was Liam. Like, Liam was my favorite character.
Liam has the most development. He has the most personality. He has probably the biggest arc of anything, like the rise, the fall of Liam. Oh, and I know we didn't get into it, but that's because there was way too much to discuss and we had to, talk about our main characters. But I would give this book a 3 also. The writing isn't terrible. It's readable. I just think it's not really worth your time. I remembered disliking this book. And so I was looking forward to rereading it again because I remembered loving Colin's book. So I thought, okay, I didn't love that as much. Maybe I would like this one, more because maybe my tastes have changed.
Yeah.
But oh my God, I never want to read this book again. I just don't.
You
I
don't have
never
to,
want
Zoe.
read it again.
You can. We left it at that. And yeah, like I said, I keep saying I remembered nothing about this book because, I just blacked it out. I tend to black out things. Like I said, I can just pull that wig off and throw it in the other room and never think about it again. And I read this book and was like, cool, let me never think about it again.
Well, I'm sorry that we made us think about this book again, but next time...
Yes, next time we come to our favorite book in the series, which is Violet's book.
Yeah, I am so pumped. We're going to be reading Violet's book next time. So next time we get to read I Kissed an Earl, which is number 4 in the Pennyroyal Green series. This is Violet Redmond and Captain Asher Flint.
Ooh, yummy, yummy, yummy.
So finally, we have one last plea for you guys, which would be, again, those 3 things: the rate, the review, the subscribe, because that's how we get found. So thank you so much for listening to us. We're having so much fun here, and we really want to hear from you guys again. romancepod@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts, and
join us next time as we read I Kissed an Earl by Julie Ann Long.
bye!
Bye-bye. Have fun. Rate, review, and subscribe.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's a pretty picture. It just doesn't connect with the characters to me. Don't get me wrong, though, because I love me a yellow bell dress, and it's a pretty yellow bell dress.
It is a pretty yellow bell dress, and it's got 2 author quotes on it of praising it. The first one is with Amanda Quick, and she's quoted as saying, "a fantastic writer." And then there's another quote by Karen Hawkins, who graced our last cover as well. And she says it's deliciously funny, witty, and sensual.
Ooh. Karen Hawkins. I disagree.
Yeah, I would disagree with that description as well.
All right. Well, now that we've bashed Karen's opinions, shall we get into our own opinions?
Yes. Sorry, Karen. I love your books. Just saying.